Two. All right. Jesse Kelly back. It's been about 2 years. How we doing, brother?
Cannot complain, my man. Every day above ground is a good day.
It is a good day. Now, like I said, it has been about 2 years in that time. You've written this book, the Anti-Communist Manifesto. Your
Mm.
show has grown exponentially, the Jesse Kelly show, and following on X has pumped up a bit. So, for those things, congratulations and you're welcome.
That's a very good point. I do
I,
owe it all to you. I can't believe it's been 2 years since I've done your show, though. Are
Yeah,
you sure about that? 2 years?
I went back and looked. It was December 9th of 2022. So we are 25 months to the day. A lot has changed, obviously, for the better, I
Congrats to
think.
you.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you. I went back and listened then, and the big point that I took away from it when we talked the last time was that we're not entitled to live in the same country as our parents, our grandparents, anything like that, right? That was kind of what we talked about then. Um, I am very glad that the election went the way it did in November because um, I don't know what type of mood it would be right now because I think, especially being as close to this nonsense as I am where I live today, um, I think there's a lot of positivity in the air. I really do think that. What do you think?
I agree. I agree. In fact, part of it worries me, and this is what I mean by that. We dodged such a big bullet that we didn't
Yeah,
have another 4 years of
yeah,
these animals running the country, right? It's hard to imagine how much damage they could have done with another 4 years. And we got Trump coming in. Obviously, everyone's happy about that. I'm happy about that. And so we're going to get some sanity in a lot of different ways, and it's good. It's good to be hopeful. I'm glad people are hopeful. I am very, very hopeful. But my concern has always been this, to save this wonderful place we love is not it's not an event. I say it all the time. It's not an event. It's a process, right? It's not one election. It's not
right.
one
Yes.
position of power. There's a lot going on. We have 1,000 battles to fight. We'll win some and we'll lose some, but we need to win more than we lose.
Yeah.
And some will be more important than others. I'm not at all dismissive of the fact that it was really, really important that Trump won that election. Really, really important. That
Yeah.
was a big one, but it didn't solve everything. It didn't even come close to solving everything. It was a huge, important battle that we won, but we still have 1,000 more. And I'm glad everyone's hopeful. I am hopeful. I don't want everyone to be in a bad mood all the time. I'm certainly not. I laugh and goof off all the time myself. But I try to remind myself and other people that there's a lot of work still to
Yeah.
do, and there are a lot of evil people still afoot.
And well, that's kind of like where your book ends is, the last two sentences, but we can do this. Let us begin. Right. And I think that's more important than anything that really comes out of the book. Um, Real quick though, I did in our celebratory conversation, I forgot to mention that tonight's discussion will be fueled by the bourbon of the year for me last year in 2024. It is the Bibb and Tucker 15 year. It is a Tennessee whiskey technically, but it only 1,476 cases of this produced, only sold in 3 states. Yours being one of them, Jesse. So you may feel free to go pick it up if you see it. And you, as you just said before, you're on the blue label, right?
Well, hold on. Let's clarify. I'm on the blue label because I got a gift for Christmas. I'm not paying that kind of money for booze.
And let me also
I
point
grew,
out
I
it's
grew up,
Scotch.
I grew up drinking Keystone Light and friggin' Jose Cuervo and Mad
It's
Dog
fun. Yeah.
2020. I'm
Yes.
not, and you know what? It's a lot cheaper that way. I'm not
I
switching
know.
over to all this fancy
It's
stuff.
it's
No, my
funny.
wife. Go ahead.
It's funny you mentioned that though, because I was in my parents' place in Tennessee for Christmas and went to one of the grocery stores there. And they had Geneseo Light. And I don't know if you know what Geneseo Light is, but I went to
Uh,
college the first time in upstate New York. And Geneseo is a big brewery up there, and we used to get 30 packs for $10.
yep.
So I found the 30 pack there at the store, the Jenny Light, and my dad and I are like, oh shit, we got to get this just because, right? It's no
Mhm.
longer $10, but still, it's the fact that the stuff that you used to drink in college that you were like, man, this stuff is awful. It's it's actually pretty decent. It's just it brings back the good memories of me and my dad like picking me up the first year and just us getting this 30 pack and getting hammered in the hotel and all. Like it was good memories, right? Like
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
the best memories,
yeah.
and look, I like a good glass of booze as much as the next man. I'm not going to pretend like I don't, but Man, some of the prices, some of the things they charge for these things today,
I
it's too
know.
rich for my blood.
It is silly. It is silly. It is well, that's the three-tiered system. Maybe you should tackle that one day when we come back to what the issues are when it comes to the price of alcohol in liquor stores in non-state controlled or non-state run controlled states. Is because of this whole three-tiered system we got. So yeah, thanks a lot, Prohibition.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's been a busy 2025, man. We're only on day 9. Um,
Well, that's the kind of world we live in now, too. I try to keep this perspective myself that every day, like we all have our phones, we all have
yeah,
social media, and like anything else, it can be a wonderful tool and a total disaster depending on how you use it. And it's probably a mixture of both for all of us, if we're
yeah,
being honest. But when it comes to news, like you can be immersed in it now. Like everyone's talking about these California wildfires now, and
right.
understandably so. We're talking about destruction like we've never seen for a
Yeah,
natural disaster, if we're
yeah,
calling it that.
yeah,
But for something like that, but it's not, what was it used to be? It was a headline in the newspaper. You wake
right.
up the next day, you're reading about it in the paper. So that was one article, and then you moved on. You weren't getting information from it all day long. Or maybe you sit down after dinner, slap the wife on the rear end, have fun with the kids. You sit down, turn on the news, and you'll see a story. What is it? A 30-second story, a 2-minute story from
Yeah,
California, and then you moved on. But we don't live like that now. So I mean, I had to walk away from it this morning. I was getting prepped for my shows and just kind of
yeah,
browsing through stuff. And you're watching heartbreaking videos of whole neighborhoods wiped out, and they've got drone footage now. And you can, it's not that it's bad to be informed. We all want to be informed, but you can immerse yourself in bad news that's not
yeah.
even where you are, right? And it's not bad to
Yeah.
be empathetic for other people, but you can read about a tsunami wiping a bunch of people out in Singapore and let that take a big fat steaming crap over all your day if you allow it. It's really important. We're all learning how to develop a filter for the news, which can come at you all the time now.
I just you bring up the fire, and you know, unfortunately, this is where my brain goes a lot of the times when stuff like this happens. Because I mean, and I talked about this in one of my little group chats earlier, a bunch of dudes that I used to play softball with out in California. But I mean, it's not a secret. Like we know there's a lot of bad people that have come across the border in the last couple of years, right? We know that. We know that there's probably going to be attacks. We just know it. It's probably going to happen. Like I'm not breaking news here, right?
Yeah.
But I think about it. They're not stupid people, right? They are going to plan what they do. And let's be honest, there's no mystery to mismanagement of California's water. Right. That I mean that's well publicized on both sides. Doesn't have to be a partisan issue. Like that's so what would be an easier thing to do from a soft target perspective than just let's start some fires. And
I
I
had
hate
a,
to think that way, but I mean
and it
this is
might
the
be
time of
that.
year where the rain comes in California, right? Like I lived in Northern California for 6 years. Like this is when the rain comes. This is something you would expect during fire season, usually in the summer, like January. I don't know, man. And the areas in which that it hit, it's just it is sad, it's heartbreaking, but at the same time, like I said, my first initial thought was like, oh, okay, that's how we're doing it.
And it could be that. That's the thing now, because we don't have really any entities, information type entities that you can trust, the
Right.
media,
Yeah.
FBI, all these
Yeah.
things. You don't
All these
have them.
institutions are ruined.
Yeah, so what do you rule out? I mean, that's the problem is you really can't rule out anything. There aren't really any theories you could tell me about these California wildfires that I would dismiss, or I should say there aren't many that I would dismiss and call you crazy. If you told me that was some homeless dude
Yeah.
cooking heroin and threw his lighter down, I'd say, yeah, sure. If you told me it
I
was
mean,
one of these greeny nutballs that light fires on purpose, they do that all over the
yeah,
place. Yeah,
you're right
sure.
about it.
Yeah,
Like,
you told me it was some communist Chinese who came
yeah.
over here and he was trying to wipe out one of the biggest and greatest cities in the country. Sure, sure, yeah, it could be any of that. That you can't rule out things as easily now as you could,
I
and
know.
people that do are really shortchanging themselves. I think a lot of times people rule that stuff out because they don't want things to be true.
Yep.
But how hard would it be? How long would you have to live in the LA area to figure out? Wait a minute, look at all that dead brush. Look at all that. It's all over the
Yeah.
newspaper that the reservoirs are low. There's dead brush everywhere. I bet you if I walked up there with some lighter fluid, I could get something rolling that would be tough to put out if the winds were right. I mean, it wouldn't exactly take a genius. Army guys could do that.
It didn't take long. 10 minutes in, and there's the first.
Yeah.
I am still always amazed that you settled for the Marine Corps. But hey,
it's it's not just that I settled. I didn't even look anywhere else. I just
that's even
walked right
really.
into
Is that true? Yeah.
I just walked
Huh.
right into the Marine recruiter's office and I said, I'm signing up. And they said, okay, what do you want to do? I said, infantry. He said, are you sure? I said, yep. That's it. There I am.
Why did I think you were you an officer or no?
No, I
I don't
work
know
for a
why I thought
living.
you were a captain in Iraq for some reason. Why did I think you were a
Oh
captain?
no, I'm an
Okay.
uneducated turd. No,
Well, that's
I
most
did.
Marines. Let's relax.
Yeah, I did 1 year at Montana State. I got a zero point
Nice.
zero grade point average my first
I
semester.
got one of those.
Yeah, that was a fun
It wasn't my
semester.
first semester, but I did get
Uh,
a 0.0. Yeah, I actually have my daughter in college now. She just finished her first semester and she tripled what I got my first semester. So it's already off to a good start.
Ain't good.
Yeah. I told her, I'm like, look, your first semester is everything. Trust me, I know because I screwed it up. So just
Yeah.
as long as you crush this first semester, then you can kind of, chill. That's great. Um, yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. And I did want to kind of get back to your book because I really enjoyed it. I went back and kind of thumbed through it for a second time, this week just to kind of get caught up on some things. And there's one thing you kind of touch on it in chapter 8 where you're going into the corporations. And I think the one thing that's really I was wondering if it was going to come up because yes, you do touch on culture, but I think the one thing that I thought was really kind of just in the last 20 years that's kind of snowballed is just pop culture, right? From music being the biggest thing. Like you notice this everywhere now. Commercials, you talk about all that stuff, I get it, but how did we go from just how have we gotten to the point where music today is just the most vacuous, decrepit, morally like just it's awful. And that's pumped into stadiums, that's pumped into commercials. It's the highlights of music. We don't have scores in movies anymore. We have just whatever trash we can throw together that is just mindless. It is just awful. How have we elevated these people to something that we're like, yes, as a society, this is what you should ascribe to, and this is the stuff that we should put out as like a reflection of our society culturally, because this is the pinnacle of music. Like we've gone from let's go back a couple hundred years where we were composing symphonies and orchestras and real music, real talent, to where now look what we've kind of we didn't evolve into this. We've devolved into this and we've elevated to this to be, like I said, this is pop culture now. Why is this where we are?
Well, music in a culture, I mean, you mentioned it already a couple times, is reflective of where your culture
Yeah.
is. It doesn't drive it. It's a reflective of what you have inside of your culture. And the truth is, in a lot of ways in this country, and this happens to almost pretty much every country in history that's ever gotten rich. You get rich and then you get decadent. That's really what that happens. You lose the drive and you lose the cultural values that made you rich. I saw something. It was on social media, and I hate not giving credit for people, but it was too long ago, so I'm not going to be able to give the person credit for it. But somebody was showing this beautiful, absolutely gorgeous church. It was over in Europe somewhere. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Everyone's seen the pictures of them with the statues, and it just looked beautiful. And it was like you looked at it and you thought to yourself, "Wow, that's amazing." And I remember, I think it took 500 or 600 years to
Okay.
build
Yeah,
this
I
church,
know which one
right?
you're talking about. Yeah.
Five or six hundred years. And the question was, why don't we build things like that anymore? And someone, it was not me, I can't take credit for this thought, but it was pretty profound and true.
It was
Someone
probably
said,
me.
well, you want to build things like this. You want society to still build things like this but you want to be able to do it without the belief system that drove the building of something like this. And you can't do that. That's not how it works at all. Societies, entire multi-generation families. My great 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 grandfather worked on that church, and then he died, and then my great great grandfather, and my dad, all the way down to my sons will work on that church because we love God and we believe in it, and we think that that church is a way to honor God. And so that was a way that drove that thing. And so people look at that beautiful architecture and things like that, and they say, I want that now. Well, there was a belief system that drove that. And if that belief system gets less popular or goes away or gets watered down, well, the churches don't come with it. And that's how I think about that kind of stuff.
So what you're talking about is divine inspiration.
Not necessarily divine. I didn't mean that to be just about church, although I
Right.
certainly
Well,
agree
I
with
mean
that
that when
too.
from that architectural, right? Like
Yeah,
that's kind of like I
not
think
just
man
about
back
church, but
then.
like for instance, if you go look and pick an explorer, right? Pick Magellan. You make it all about Magellan.
Yeah.
How does Magellan end up spanning the globe, and he ends up in a war with a bunch of tribesmen in the Philippines and dies, poison arrows, they're clubbing him to death. Why do you do that? At some point in time, even if you're accomplished, why don't you stop? You're rich, you're famous. Why don't you go home? Yeah, Lewis and Clark, pick your explorer.
Yeah.
Why don't you stop? You're venturing into the never never land. Well, there is a drive there to explore and achieve and do great things. And you can lose that if you get too fat and too decadent, and you have too much plenty. You can lose your drive to succeed and to do more. And we as a society can fall into that easily. And it's not that we're bad, it's just human nature when everything is easy. I could sit here right now while we talk. I'm doing this show on my phone, and while we talk, I could boop boop boop. I could dial up an extra meat lovers pizza with extra
Yep.
cheese that'll be here in 15 minutes. And oh, by the way, I could order some new Bose headphones that'll be here in probably 4 hours because we're next to a big Amazon hub, and I could do this while I'm having a discussion with you. That is a level of comfort and ease and I'm not complaining about it, right? That's
Oh yeah,
good.
yeah.
But when you get to that level, what drives you? Why are you driven to do more? And it can kill you as a society and ends up getting reflected in culture over there. Where, I mean, you mentioned these trash music videos where every chick is half naked and it's all,
Yeah.
drugs and women and all that other crap. Well, that's simply just a click-based society. You're sitting there, you're zoning out. Yeah, I think I'd like to see some TNA, so I'll click on that. It becomes who you are.
Does it come back?
Well,
I mean, like we're
this
talking
is
about
what
your book, right? We're talking about this is an ongoing, enduring. It's going to be past our lifetimes, hopefully our kids, maybe our grandkids. Like it's an enduring battle, right?
it
So how
is
do
an
we get
enduring
back to that?
battle,
Yeah.
and you never know whether this downward spiral you're in is going to be the last one, because for some societies they rise and then they fall and they just keep falling and then they're gone. For some that lasted longer, Romans and the accumulated Persians, some it'll go up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down, and then eventually it's gone. You just never know, right? But what we're struggling with now is something societies have struggled with throughout history. You get two generations removed from Genghis Khan, the tough Mongols are living in silk robes and Chinese palaces, and Kublai Khan is having to rotate his troops back to the Asian steppe because they're getting fat and lazy and they're stuck now. This is not a new problem that we struggle with. That's what societies struggle with.
It sounds familiar though, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, it does. Look, it's how it is. It's how it is. It's hard to keep that edge. It's very hard.
Speaking of which, I just was reading this and I saw it a few places, but I just thought it was interesting that you bring it up. So are you aware that China within the next 15 years will become the largest Christian nation?
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. There's so many of those daggone people over there. There's the most Republicans in
Do
the
you think that
country in
could
California.
do you think that can happen though, given like just all of China, like you document the history very well, like the brutality of just like the shit that they've done before. Do you think they would allow that to take hold there?
I think that many, many, many people have tried to stop the word of Jesus throughout history, and
Oh,
they've all
yeah.
they've all failed. I don't give a
Yeah.
crap how many of those filthy chi-coms over there try to oppress their people from learning. You're not going to overcome Jesus Christ. So you can try all you want, but it's simply not going to work.
That's a good point. I'm glad you said that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, where was I? Man, there's just so much shit that I had written down. Yeah, I want to go back to something because I don't know if I really got. You may have been traversing the planet at the time, but what did you think about the Vivek and the Elon thing with the H-1B visas that happened kind of around Christmas?
I think it's
Like this whole
ludicrous. I think it's ludicrous that it's
replacement theory.
controversial that a nation should serve its own citizens first. That the only point in becoming a tribe, maybe a small tribe or a big, powerful country, the only purpose in coming together and living with other people is prosperity and protection. That is the only reason you agree. It is a contract. You agree to live underneath a government. You agree so they can provide for you the conditions for prosperity and protection. So Canada should be for Canadians first. France should be for French people first. America should be for Americans first. And when it comes to immigration, we always talk about illegal immigration, but immigration doesn't suddenly become wonderful just because some scumbag politician or his CEO benefactor decides to go ahead and put a stamp on it and call it legal. That doesn't make it wonderful. Now, I'm not saying you stop people from immigrating to the country. I'm not saying that at all. But when you have American companies, and this is well documented, having American employees train their Indian replacements in mass and then get fired from the job so they can bring someone in for pennies on the dollar, that's flat out criminal. And I don't give a crap who, whether they're on my side or not on my
Yeah.
side, defends that. They can all go pound sand, every single one of them. America should serve Americans first. It blows me away that that is even
Right.
kind of controversial
Yeah.
at all. Of course, it should be for Americans first. Now, if we have to bring in people because there are shortfalls somewhere, or you have some elite scientists and things like that, of course, that's fine, whatever. But we're not talking about doctors and the top rocket scientists in the world. We're
Yeah.
talking about people at entry level jobs, mid level jobs, where Americans occupy those jobs. But a lot of business owners, I say today, but that makes me sound like an old man. It's not like there weren't scumbag business people back in the day. I mean, Crassus was a piece of crap during Roman times. I mean, it just is what it is. But a lot of these business people, when your life is profit loss sheets and things like that, and expenses and things like that, you can, unless you are raised patriotic. I'm about to go off on patriotism here. Unless you are raised patriotic, then America can just be a profit loss sheet. It is. It's just a matter of, well, we can we'll cut out some of this money here, and I can get this guy for cheaper, and then we'll make more profit with this. It can become that if that's your entire world. And that's why I talk about patriotism all the time. It is not like this hokey thing or a cliche thing. It is the essential element for a country. And if you lose it, I don't care what happens in the latest election or whatever, if you lose that, then you are already done. You either get it back or your country will end. Unless the people in your country feel an obligation to it, not just the poor people, not just the middle class, but that goes for the elite types too. Unless they feel a sense of duty, I guess I'll put it that way, a
Yeah.
sense of duty to
Yeah.
their country, then your country is finished. And that is what we are lacking so bad now. If I wanted to destroy America, I wouldn't necessarily have to campaign for Democrats and do all this other stuff. I would simply take generations of American citizens and tell them their country sucked. And if you can raise them up that way and get them to think that way, well, it doesn't matter where they go after I disperse them from my education system. No matter what, they'll operate on a complete selfish level with no sense of duty to the country, and America just becomes a profit loss sheet. So that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, that's you bring up two things that I was going to touch up. So my initial contention and my argument that I made in opposition to what Elon and Vivek said is Vivek's a first generation American and Elon's a naturalized citizen, right?
Yeah.
You may have a similar history. I don't know your family history, but my father volunteered for Vietnam. Both of my grandfathers were in Korea and in World War II. They don't have that experience. They didn't learn any of that patriotism that you just described or that sacrifice through wars in the previous generations. They didn't hear those stories. They didn't learn about their friends that died in those experiences or those wars. They don't know anything about that. And as a naturalized citizen for Elon, like he's the last person I would take patriotism advice from, and Vivek even less because he was born here from two people who came over from a country that no one is on the back. Like, hey, I can't wait to move to fucking India. Like that's not happening, right? So when I hear them being the ones making the argument for this, what we're describing, I just hear it from two people who have no stake truly in what it means to actually be an American. They've benefited from what the country has offered and provided them. And yes, they're very bright, smart individuals. I'm not taking anything away from them. Like last I checked, they got more money than me. So they're doing something right. Okay. That was my biggest takeaway from that is like, you guys are describing something that totally doesn't even take into account what is taken for this country to get to this point. Generations of sacrifice and death and bloodshed.
Mhm.
You don't import that, which brings me to my next point because you say this, and I think I know we kind of adjacent to a lot of people that kind of intersect, but I think we all kind of have this as a fear is that, and it's something you talk about in this book, we're going to lose a major war. And so my question to you then comes back to kind of what you were finishing with is when there's no sense of duty, who are we even going to draw upon to fight it? Like that's like look, you can sit here and tell me we got 350 million people, everyone's got guns, that's fine, but who are you going to draw on to put into your ranks and put a uniform on to go fight for the country?
Mhm.
Like
And
and why would you want to given everything you just saw play out with the GWAT?
well, I mean, let me tackle both those things kind of in this order. On top of genuine sense of patriotism,
Yep.
a sense of appreciation for working people, and for employees. If maybe you're a CEO, and I don't mean kind of just here's a $50 gift card to Amazon at Christmas time. A genuine sense of appreciation for people who work underneath you and working people in this country, American citizens, is lost on a lot of people. One of the most valuable lessons I learned from my father, God rest his soul, we were just a construction family, right? We didn't have any money or anything like that. But about the time I joined the Marines, he started a construction company, little construction company. And he's a very sharp guy business wise, ended up doing great. He ended up doing great, retiring, and made a bunch of money and did great for himself. Of course, all this happens after I leave the friggin' house because I don't get any benefits for it.
Yeah, it makes
But he
sense.
ends up doing
There's a
great.
common denominator there.
Yeah, no doubt. And I remember the Christmas bonuses and things like that he would hand out every year of just ridiculous amounts of money. And I was in the Marines at the time, and he was trying to teach me how to read a profit loss sheet and things like that. And I was looking at it, and I looked at the money like that he would hand out, and I remember objecting and saying, "Dad, come on, man, this is what are you doing?" And I remember how he put me in my place and told me about the value of people who work and how you treasure people who work and bust their butts and how they're every bit as much part of the company as a person whose name is on that. And he was so all about that. And I always appreciated working people anyway, but even looking at that, looking at what it meant, but for him, that was important. It was super important. And I mean, I just went to his funeral 3 months ago, and the number of people there who showed up that he had fired, that didn't even work for him
That's
anymore,
crazy.
just because they had so much respect for
That's
him,
wild.
blew me away,
That's
freaking blew me
awesome.
away. I'm like,
That's
what is this
amazing.
guy doing here? That's respect right there. I mean, that was, and so That's what you should have for if I don't care how big of a billionaire you are or whatever. That's what you should have. Respect for Americans and American jobs and things like that. You don't push them out the door because you can hire somebody for 40 cents on the dollar. That doesn't
Yeah.
happen. Now, as far as the military goes, we were talking about a sense of duty. I am a World War II freak, like anyone who has gray in their beard, right? I love it. I always have. I just blown away by the size of it and the horror of it and everything else, and Korean War and all that stuff. But World War II is obviously a passion of mine. And one of the things that has hit me so hard as I read book after book after book on it were how many commanders, generals, admirals who either resigned and killed themselves because of what they viewed as failure for their men. Guys who it wasn't even their fault, incidents that weren't even their fault, such a sense of duty they had to the men underneath them. That now I'm not encouraging anybody to kill themselves, please, but
No, no, I understand.
how,
Yeah.
what kind of sense of duty do you have to have? We fought a GWAT war for 20 freaking years, failure after failure after failure of guys giving their blood and their legs and their arms and their mental health. And not one of these worthless scumbags ever said, "Hey, man, here's my stars. I should have done better. That's on me." Not
Not
one.
one. Not one.
Nobody could name
Not
one.
one. Not
It was
one.
it floors me. And these are the people who lead the good guys, the guys on the front line. And that's what sickens me so much about it is people talk about, well, all the good guys are gone. That's not true.
No,
There's
that's
so many studs still
yeah.
in there. But those guys, what honestly, it keeps me up at night. Now I'm going to get myself riled up. I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. What keeps me up at night is what's going to happen to those guys if, God forbid, some hot war kicks off with some kind of near peer? They're going to get tossed away and killed because of the scumbags who lead them. And those are the best people in our country. You
Mm.
don't take the 82nd and just toss those lives away. And they would be tossed away under these dirt balls. And the dirt ball who tossed their life away wouldn't have even that much guilt. He'd walk away, move right on to Raytheon, and make $1 million and never write a letter to their moms, never do any of that stuff. It sickens me what has happened with the Flag Officer Corps. They disgust me, all of them. Screw them all.
That still leaves to the question of who we're going to get. Like, if we're talking about, here's what, when I left recruiting, right? The world's passed several years now. The big thing that I was noticing, the trend, and it's continued, is our kids, they're not joining. The military, specifically the Army, has always relied on legacy enlistments. Always. I just gave you my own story, right? Grandparents, growth grandfathers, dad volunteered. Um, the only reason I joined was because of 9/11. Like, I dropped out of college because like that was it. That was my call. That was my moment. We haven't had that yet in this country, right? I know Army leaders will go back and say that they thought COVID was going to be this big call to like service, and it wasn't. Um, but when you don't get the legacy enlistments, that's what leads to recruiting failure, right? Which is what we have overall. Marines are fine. You guys don't really recruit anybody, but but from a large scale perspective, we're
Yeah.
failing because we're not getting the legacy enlistments. The parents of our generation, the GWAT generation, are telling their kids, "You're not joining."
Mhm.
So how do you combat that? How do you overcome it without, if something like you said, if a hot war kicks off with a near peer, or we're called to go play security somewhere, who's going to do it?
Well, historically, that's only happened one of two ways. If the
Mm-hmm.
Patriots stop signing up, which they're not signing up, as you just pointed out, that hardcore, the high school wrestler in Louisiana, he doesn't want to go fight in the gay military, so he's going to go do something else with his life. And we never know, right? You don't know the Medal of Honor guy who never joined, right? The guy that what could have been, you don't know because he's selling insurance in Omaha now. You just don't know what he could have been.
Yeah.
But historically, you only fill that gap one of two ways. Either you force people to join which in this country would end up with people getting shot because that's not
Fucking,
going to happen.
it'd be fucking ridiculous. It would,
It would
oh,
that would end up with people getting shot.
it'd be
Government people would get
awful.
shot.
It would
It
be
would.
so bad.
It would be bad.
So bad.
So, and the
Forget
only other
Vietnam.
way, yeah, the only other way is foreigners. That's how they do it. You already had a United States senator in
But what?
Illinois say, "Why don't we just sign all these illegals up and put them in the military? We've got recruiting shortfalls." Dick Durbin's on the Senate floor talking about it. Historically, that's the only one of two ways you do that: that or Mercs. But we're not going to go that route. So there you go. That's how that works. And look, there aren't good answers. If
No,
you
it's
trot
not.
out the military and you take them, like you said, the legacy guys, it's not just that the legacy guys have historically filled up the military. I do this thing every Monday on my radio show called Medal of Honor Monday, where I read a Medal of Honor citation. It's nothing special. I just
That's pretty cool. That's
honor
cool.
the guy,
Yeah,
honor
that's
the
a good
deed.
way to make yourself feel inadequate. So if that's what you like to do, that's
Look,
cool.
look, I don't need any help with that, Red. I was the most average Marine in the world. I don't need any help to feel inadequate. But you read these stories, and I try to, as often as possible, read up on a little background on the guy. It's stunning how often the guy who charges a machine gun nest jumps on a grenade, his dad was in, his uncle was in, his grandpa was in. If it always seems to be that guy. The best officers, I generally hate officers anyway, but almost always the best officers, their dad was in. And they're the best officers because their dad told them, you lead from the front, you do that, you do that. And those are the guys who turn out to be lions all the time. It's not just that the guys aren't joining, the best guys are not joining. We need those guys, and they're not going to join. Look, I told my boys. My boys are 14 and 16. I watched all this filth. I watched them kick everyone out for not getting the vax. I watched all this go to your newest gay seminar crap. I watched them do all this stuff, and I told my boys, you'll go do something else. If you want to live a life of service, I support you. I want you to. Go be a freaking fireman somewhere. Go be a cop somewhere. Go do something. There are a lot of ways to serve your country. It doesn't have to be putting on a uniform. So I've told that to my boys. And I'll tell you something else. I don't have a single GWAT buddy of mine, not one, who is encouraging his kids to join. And almost all of them, to a man, are telling their kids not to.
Yeah, no,
that's everyone I know.
We have the lived experience. Like, it's the same for me. Like, I don't want my daughter in this military. No, absolutely not. And fortunately for her, she doesn't want to. So good for her. But either way, like, no, I would never, absolutely not. And if she did, it damn sure wouldn't be the fucking army. No. Absolutely not. So, I mean, no, but you're one person telling me your shared circle of experience. I'm telling you what I know. I'm telling you the people I know. It's already realized in the recruiting shortfalls. Like, it is what it is. Like, and it's been squandered. And that goes back to the last point I wanted to make and ask you about is, do you think it's because we no longer have the political class involved in sacrificing as well? Now, there's some ones and twos of the, like, there are some people who do, but for the most part, like, we don't have the Kennedys anymore. Like, we don't have that. Like, even the Bushes, whether you like the man or not, like, at least they served. You know, you got family history that was in it. You know, like I said, the Kennedys and the Bush, like, you look at we don't have that anymore. Do you think that impacts or affects people from having a call to duty? Like you were
Yes and no. I'll put it to you this way. I'm really, really hot on this. This is Chicken Hawks just freaking grade me like no tomorrow. But I'll say this, that makes it easier to declare the next war. It is a very, very big deal that, for the most part, again, there are examples, John Kelly and others, but generals don't die. Okay, fine. Their kids don't die. Their kids don't serve. Senators don't die, don't serve. Mitt Romney wants to invade every piece of ground on the face of the planet. He's got 8,000 kids. Not one of them has ever darkened the door of a recruiting office. So what you're saying when you say that is, this war is super, super important. Not important enough for me to die, of course, or anyone I love, but definitely important for you to die. So I've determined that this war is important enough for you to go die. So kiss your wife and kids goodbye. Have a good one. I'll be back here sipping on my chocolate milk. That doesn't work for me at all. But I really think it comes back mostly to patriotism, which we've talked about extensively again tonight, just like last time, because it is so incredibly essential. If you really value your country and your countrymen, you are simply more careful with it. I mean, we talk a lot. It's a hot news topic now to talk about the money and equipment we
Oh,
send
yeah.
to Ukraine. But let's really focus on that for a moment. We still have people freezing in North Carolina. People in Hawaii have been
Why?
wiped
Yeah.
out by fires. And look, these are just the ones in recent memory.
150 billion has gone to Ukraine.
But East Palestine, Ohio, and
Oh, yeah.
yet
Yeah.
not only
Yeah.
will they send billions and billions and billions of dollars overseas, they are so out of touch with America, and there's so little sense of duty for America. They almost universally will get up and give a press conference and brag about it. It's not just like they do it behind the scenes. Hey, man, here's some Ukrainian money. They will get up and not mention a word about American suffering and brag about the money they're sending to one of the most corrupt countries in the world. They do this repeatedly over and over and over again. How could that possibly happen? Well, these people, it's not even just that they hate America. Yes, some of them do. It's actually worse than that. They don't give America a second thought. If your ex girlfriend hates your guts, that's probably a good thing because that means she still has some feelings for you at all. But or some feelings for
Yeah.
you in some way. But if she never checks your Twitter feed, if she never thinks about you at all, if she runs into you in the grocery store and kind of gives you that look of, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot you even existed, that is so much worse. And that is exactly how the politicians in this country, on both sides, many of them on both sides, think about the country. They just simply, you wake up, I wake up, the people we know, we wake up and we'll be heartsick about this part or inflation or this guy died or something like that. And we're sick about what's happening to our country. These people never have those moments. Not for 5 seconds do they have a genuine tug for America, unless patriotism is instilled in people, in your culture, with your education system. Then from that, everything will fall apart. But if you do that, everything will work. That's what we're missing.
So we had it in 9/11. So in one generation, we've lost it, you think?
Well, part of the reason we lost it is because of how we acted after 9/11.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
truth
No,
of
you're
it. I
right.
mean,
Yeah.
how many guys out there were like you? I didn't. I was already in. I was in for a year when 9/11
Yeah.
happened. I'm not one of those studs. I probably would have ran the other way. But how many of those studs like you joined after full of patriotism, and then you get your patriotism kicked in your freaking face?
Yeah.
Then you find yourself in Afghanistan guarding the poppy fields, and you're looking around wondering, wait a minute, what? This isn't, no, this is not what I signed up to do. If you take the patriotic generation and you disenfranchise them that way, you can get to where we are now in a hurry, in a real big hurry.
Yeah. Well, we got there in a hurry. Uh,
Yeah.
Man, there's a million things I could talk to you about, but I'm going to respect the time. I do appreciate you hopping in here again to
Sure.
the virtual bar. Happy hour with Jesse Kelly. You can find him on where can they find you? You have the radio show, you have the TV show.
Yeah.
Where's that at?
It's around. It's the radio shows across the country. It's national now, which is
Yep.
ridiculous to me.
That's
But
pretty
if you
fucking
want to,
cool, right?
yeah, yeah, man, it is kind of cool. It's weird. I'll tell you. If you want to know where that is, it's at jessekellyshow.com or just
Yep.
download the podcast anywhere. And TV's on the first TV. You can find that anywhere. And
That's
I'm all
awesome.
over Twitter offending people all the time anyway.
I
So
know it is great, and I'm glad you do it, and I love it every day. I see you quote somebody who just doesn't get it, and it's just it cracks me up, man. Like it really is. It's good to see someone like yourself having the success that you're having. Like I said, so all those things, and don't forget, please, if you haven't already, go get the communist or the anti. No, don't get the Communist Manifesto. That's already getting distributed for free in your colleges and universities. I had to read that shit. Did I tell you I was a political science major? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I read that shit. It cracked me up from day one, but whatever. So the Anti-Communist Manifesto, Jesse Kelly. All right, and then also don't forget his cheeseburger recipes in here. Need that. Cooked that for my daughter last week. To be honest with you,
They're good, aren't they?
oh no, I've done it a few times, but this is the first time she had it. She loved it. It's good. That
Good.
Chipotle Tabasco is heaven. It really
It
is
is.
good
It's
stuff.
amazing.
Magic ingredient. All right, brother. Appreciate it. Thanks again.
See you, my man.
All right, buddy.